for Learning Summit, engaging displaced youth to transform education. We've had an incredible lineup of impressive group of diverse advocates seeking ways to improve education for refugees, forcibly displaced, and youth, and host community children and youth. I've been especially inspired and in a few moments, for a few moments, tearful when I heard from the young people. But what has inspired me is their absolute dedication to developing Youth Manifesto and to continuing to drive and demand change. To lead us through the final session, please join me in welcoming our co-hosts, Refugee Education Council member Amélie Fabian, and of course, our Honorable Minister, Minister Sajan. Emily's family fled from Rwanda to Malawi, where she lived as a refugee from the age of 6 to 18. She came to Canada in 2014 to study at McGill University. Since arriving in Canada, Amélie has been dedicated to improving access to education. Her main passion is in education policy and its role in facilitating the inclusion of marginalized communities, such as refugees, to reduce inequality. Amélie hopes to use her education, lived experience, and connections to help more refugees and displaced youth obtain an education. Now, while our minister needs no instruction, or rather introduction either, this summit has made clear that the education is not just a priority for the Government of Canada, but a personal priority for the minister. Welcome, Amélie and Minister Sajan.
Great, thank you much again, Farah. Education is a subject that is very close to my heart, and I know to everyone who's listening right now, to your heart as well. And time again, we have seen the power of education, and I have seen and witnessed it in many parts of the world. So, seeing what it means to give people an opportunity to learn, how education is the foundation for our future, not just for every young person, but for all of us. So we have all seen the images of children fleeing the horrible violence in Ukraine. We have seen the attacks on schools in Ukraine, even as they provided shelter to people who have fled their homes. And just last week, millions of girls in Afghanistan woke up on their first day of school only to learn that the Taliban had extended the unacceptable ban on girls' education. And those images of girls and their families crying that morning are heartbreaking. And these images remind us that the time to act is now, and that all of us, civil societies, ministers of education, young people, and educators have a part to play to ensure that every child everywhere has access to safe, quality, inclusive, and equitable education. The past 2 days have shown us that there are solutions that we can work on right now to make our shared vision to leave no one behind and turn it into a reality. And what I find especially inspiring is listening to the leadership and the passion from young people themselves. Their voices are critical in shaping solutions that work with the circumstances that they're living through. And I especially want to thank the members of the Refugee Education Council. They have set out a clear agenda to ensure that all children and youth have equal access to a safe, quality education. So before we turn to the question of how we will take on the agenda and move it forward, I'd like to turn the floor over to Amélie, a member of the Refugee Council, who will give us her views. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for that reminder of how urgent these issues still are presently. We're not looking to solve problems of the past. These issues are still ongoing. I speak on behalf of the Council when I say that I've been impressed by the turnout to the summit. It's great to see participation from fellow youth advocates, from government officials, agency representatives, the CSOs, private citizens, and even the private sector. This aligns with our belief at the Council that everyone has a role to play in addressing issues that are preventing refugees and displaced youth from fully participating in education. During this summit, youth have been at the front and center of all sessions. We've presented the Together for Learning Youth Manifesto and Anthology. These two documents are a symbol of the work we've been doing since the launch of the campaign last year in February. This work, I'd like to remind everyone, is done on personal time. We are students, we are professionals, we are parents. Some of us are even new parents, but we still make time. We meet on weekends mostly to discuss how to close this education inequality. One thing I know for sure is that the young people who are here are committed. We want these issues to be a thing of the past, and we want this urgently. We want education systems that are inclusive to refugee and displaced youth across all backgrounds. We want mental health and psychosocial support for learners who have experienced displacement. This burden should not fall on teachers in addition to their role as educators. We want technology to be leveraged to facilitate learning for displaced youth. We want to see refugee and displaced girls access quality education. And we want to see proper accountability mechanisms put in place. Everyone has a role to play to make education for all refugees and displaced youth a reality. And the vision outlined in the Youth Manifesto can be attained in our lifetime. We're pleased to receive a response to the manifesto in the form of a joint communique. I hope that these commitments can be turned into action by the time we reconvene for the Transforming Education Summit and the Global Refugee Forum. And the manifesto call to action includes ways in which all stakeholders can contribute, whether you're a government official in a donor country, in a host country, a private citizen, CSOs, anyone who wants to work towards attaining refugee education can find guidance in the manifesto. To conclude, I'd like to commend the Government of Canada for creating this space. Your commitment to refugees and to refugee education does not go unnoticed. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to World Vision Canada for hosting the council, and to Tiana Ridley Padmore and Rita Audi for coordinating the council. It's not easy to coordinate members in different time zones with different access to internet, electricity, but you still made it happen. You still guided us through this entire year, and this is also, you should also feel very proud for the work that you've done with us this past year. And finally, I'd like to thank other CSOs as well that joined some of our meetings and helped us guide us throughout this year. This collaboration is a great example of how to engage youth in issues that matter to them in a manner that is not tokenistic. And I'd like to emphasize that bit. I do hope that other governments and organizations can learn from you, the Government of Canada and Canadian CSOs. Finally, to my fellow council members and youth advocates that I've worked with, thank you. Thank you for this past year. Thank you for being vulnerable, and thank you for sharing your stories in this anthology. Thank you for relieving your traumas on a constant basis. I know this is not easy, and it takes a lot of courage. I have learned so much, and I'd also like to thank you again. The work you do can feel thankless at times, but it will make life that much easier for future generations. And for that, you should be so proud, and we should continue lifting each other up. Thank you all very much. Merci beaucoup.
Amélie, thank you so very much. Your comments, your enthusiasm are infectious, and I know that your words will not fall on deaf ears. We have a special message now from Filippo Grandi, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Please roll the tape.
Dear friends, we all know the value of education, knowledge, skills, hope for a better future. While it is a universal truth, we know it is not equally applied, and millions of children around the world are missing out on this life-defining opportunity. This is particularly the case for the millions of refugee and displaced children and youth already uprooted from their homes due to violence, persecution, discrimination, war. They, and especially the girls, are far too often unable to access schooling and exercise their right to an education. And the consequences are grave, first and foremost for the individuals, but also for their families, their communities, and both their countries of asylum and their countries of origin, which will require educated and skilled women and men to help recover and rebuild for the future. UNHCR does what it can to help, like here in Afghanistan, where I am now, and where we constructed the 12-classroom Saracha Ali Khan Girls High School in Nangarhar province. I am in this school right now, and this school will enable those families returning to this area after years of displacement to send their daughters to school. But we cannot do this alone. We need good, strong policies of inclusion from host countries and communities. And we and they need the financial resources to be able to include refugee and displaced children in their systems. That means money for schools, for classrooms, for teachers, for a brighter future, for a greater opportunity, and to ensure that all children, including refugee and displaced children, can make the most of their potential. And while I regret that I'm unable to be there with you at the Together for Learning Summit, I'm inspired to know that each and every one of you here today is deeply committed to creating a future where all refugee children have the knowledge and the skills to live fulfilling and independent lives. And allow me to thank Canada for its leadership and support in this important area of work. And let us all together fight for a world where all children, no matter where they're born or where they live, have access to quality education and lifelong learning.
I will now turn the mic over to Leslie Norton, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Canada to the United Nations in Geneva, to speak about the summit outcome document, the key commitments, and why they matter. Mr. Norton.
Thank you very much, Farah. Hello, Minister and Amélie, and good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be the one to officially present this summit outcome document. This was developed in consultation with the governments that participated in the closed-door dialogues with youth yesterday, where ministers expressed their commitment to a robust response to the Youth Manifesto. To that end, it recognizes a range of actions to ensure that refugees, other forcibly displaced, and host community children and youth can get a safe, equitable, inclusive, and quality education, including advancing gender equality in and through schools, supporting mental health and social emotional development, improving remote learning and digital learning, and addressing the digital divide, promoting skills training in higher education, using data for evidence-based decision-making, and most importantly, including children and youth in decision-making about schools and education systems, including at the global level as the sector rebuilds from the devastating effects of the pandemic. This document reflects our shared ambition to achieve SDG 4 and leave no one behind. For Canada, the summit and its outcome document reflect our continuing commitment to champion education in displacement and our commitment to refugee inclusion. We made commitments at the World Humanitarian Summit in 2016, where we helped launch Education Cannot Wait. During Canada's G7 presidency in 2018, where we committed to unlocking the potential of adolescent girls and launched the Charlevoix Declaration on Quality Education. Through our response to the COVID-19 pandemic, where we allocated $79 million in emergency funding to address the impacts of school closures, in our responses to emergency crises and protracted conflicts by supporting education initiatives for refugees, forcibly displaced, and host community children and youth in places such as Colombia, Ecuador, Jordan, Lebanon, and Bangladesh, and finally, through longstanding partnerships with national ministries of education in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. In Geneva, I will bring the Youth Manifesto and the Summit outcome document to our humanitarian partners, including the Geneva Global Hub for Education in Emergencies, and work in partnership with them to support the commitments in the outcome document. I'd like to close by challenging everyone here today to think about how you can champion the actions outlined in the Youth Manifesto and in the Summit Outcome document, and ensure that these actions are brought forward to the Transforming Education Summit in September 2022. Thank you very much.
You know, it's been a day and a half, and it finally, my nerves caught up to me. So my brain was saying, Madam. My mouth said, Mister. I apologize for that. And thank you very much for your comments. I'd like now to welcome Susan McIsaac, who is the CEO of Right to Play International. Right to Play is one of the many Canadian international civil society organizations doing innovative work promoting quality education and learning through the power of play. Right to Play is also the co-chair of the Canadian International Education Policy Working Group and have been a very important part of the thought leadership and advocates in Canada, including in advocating for the Charlevoix Declaration. Susan, please take over.
Thank you, Farah. On behalf of Right to Play International and our Canadian civil society partners, I'd like to start by thanking Minister Sajjan and his colleagues in the Department of Global Affairs Canada for convening this summit over the last 2 days. We want to welcome and signal our strong support for the Together for Learning Summit Outcomes document. We know that these areas for further action are the culmination of hours of collaborative dialogue between donors, ministries of education, civil society, multilateral organizations, and foundations. Most importantly, it responds directly to the needs and recommendations of refugee and displaced youth themselves, included in the Youth Manifesto. It's critical that we carry these ideas forward together, not for children and youth, but with them. All of us were moved and energized by the personal stories we heard from these accomplished young leaders over the last 2 days. But these young people did not come here simply to inspire us. I believe they are here to motivate us, challenge us, provide us innovative solutions, and hold us to account, as they should. And for that, I'm very grateful for their engagement. I know the word unprecedented has been used so often that it's almost losing meaning, but we need to really sit and reflect on the depth and breadth of the challenges that we're facing. The ongoing COVID pandemic, climate shocks, and the worsening attacks in the Ukraine, which serve as a very grim reminder of the ongoing and almost forgotten crises in Afghanistan, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Colombia, Mali, and on and on. At times, it feels truly overwhelming, but we must meet the urgency of the moment. This includes the need to expand equitable access to remote and flexible learning options, including digital learning, and scaling up mental health and psychosocial support within education programming, and to address trauma and promote the well-being of students and teachers. When children and young people are out of school, their mental health, learning, and development suffers. Without an education in a safe and nurturing learning environment, children and young people lose their sense of belonging and are denied the opportunity to acquire the knowledge and skills they need to reach their full potential. This is especially true for girls. Once again, I want to thank Canada for the policy leadership in convening us for this summit. As we look ahead, we call on all those present at the summit to consider how we can turn this renewed political momentum into tangible action. Recognizing the immediate and overwhelming needs, it's incumbent on all partners, including the Government of Canada, to increase investments in global education, including education for refugee and displaced learners, in order to achieve our shared level of ambition to both expand access and improve the quality of education. This morning, Ismail Beathe challenged us to be bold in developing policies that would create a world different than the one we currently live in. We know what to do. We share a common set of goals. So let's get it done. Farah?
Thank you so much, Susan. It's really, really nice to see you across my screen. We have received a pre-recorded message from the Norwegian Minister of International Development If we could please go ahead and share that now.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to have this opportunity to congratulate you on organizing this Together for Learning Summit. I'd like to thank Canada for their great leadership. I'd also like to recognize the important voice and role of youth in preparing the summit. Education is essential for people to lead healthy and productive lives. In humanitarian crisis, schools should be a safe haven and provide psychosocial support, protection, and hope for the future. Protecting education from attack is essential to uphold the right to education and ensure safe access to education in conflicts and emergencies. We call for the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2601 and encourage all states to endorse and implement the Safe Schools Declaration. Still, we know that crisis and conflict situations are increasingly preventing girls and boys, including refugees and internally displaced children and young people, from getting an education. It was a real backlash when we recently heard that Taliban has decided that girls in Afghanistan would not be allowed to attend secondary school, despite their previous assurances. This is a nightmare for all the girls who, over the past time, have dreamt of coming back to school. And we urge Taliban to reverse their decision. Providing support for education in emergencies has long been a priority for Norway. We are a major contributor to Education Cannot Wait. The fund supports education for children and young people affected by crisis and has helped to provide education for close to 4.6 million girls and boys. I look forward to co-convening the Education Cannot Wait Replenishment Conference together with Switzerland and Germany. And we must contribute to all children and youth, including refugees and internally displaced, getting an education. This should be a key priority in our efforts moving forward, including at Transforming Education Summit, to be held in September.
It's now my pleasure to welcome Canada's ambassador to Colombia, Marianick Tremblay. We have said throughout the summit how important partnership is, and when it comes to education, partnering with national ministries of education is fundamental to the success. Madam Tremblay will speak to us today about the special partnership Canada has with the Colombian Ministry of Education and the work they are doing together to address the educational needs of millions of internally and forcibly displaced children in Colombia. This relationship is an exceptional example of the kinds of partnerships we need to keep doing. Welcome, Ambassador.
Merci beaucoup. Merci Farah de cette invitation pour participer à la séance de clôture du sommet Ensemble pour l'apprentissage depuis notre ambassade du Canada ici à Bogota, en Colombie. Alors, le thème qui nous rassemble aujourd'hui est en effet particulièrement pertinent pour la Colombie. Comme vous le savez, depuis quelques années, la situation politique, socio-économique du voisin, le Venezuela, s'est aggravée. Donc, ceci a provoqué la migration, le départ de plus de 6 millions de Vénézuéliens qui, bien sûr, ont cherché un refuge dans les pays voisins. En Colombie, c'est plus de 1,8 million Vénézuéliens, dont plus de 530 000 enfants et jeunes adolescents qui sont ici maintenant en territoire colombien. C'est énorme. C'est un pays c'est le pays qui est le plus touché par cette migration-là en particulier. Mais en plus de la dynamique migratoire, on sait aussi que la Colombie a souffert et continue de souffrir des différents impacts d'un très long conflit armé interne. Alors, c'est plus de 8,2 millions de Colombiens qui eux-mêmes sont considérés comme des victimes de déplacements forcés dans leur propre pays. Si on regarde ça dans son ensemble, on parle donc de millions d'enfants, adolescents et aujourd'hui jeunes adultes qui, en fait, ont vu leur parcours éducatif sérieusement perturbé par tous ces impacts-là au cours des dernières années. Donc, les autorités locales ont constamment dû, comme ailleurs dans le monde, bien sûr, réagir, s'adapter. Et au fur et à mesure où la situation se complexifiait, il fallait toujours se réinventer. Alors, ce n'était pas facile. Ça continue d'être un très grand défi. Mais il y a d'excellentes pratiques et des exemples de réussite sur ce que la Colombie a fait et qui a contribué à gérer cette crise-là d'une façon constructive. Je sais que la ministre colombienne de l'Éducation a eu l'opportunité hier de partager plusieurs de ces exemples-là avec un panel de ministres. C'est une ministre qui effectivement est très active et très engagée, ce qui par ailleurs rend notre travail sur le terrain beaucoup plus facile. Donc, de mon côté, effectivement, ce que je veux partager avec vous, c'est 4 points qui, je pense, sont des points qui sont fondamentaux, qui nous guident à tous les jours dans le travail que nous faisons, dans la collaboration constructive que nous avons établie ici avec le gouvernement de la Colombie et surtout le ministère de l'Éducation. Alors, mon premier point porte sur l'engagement et la générosité. C'est vraiment important de reconnaître qu'effectivement, le peuple colombien, les institutions, le gouvernement ont accueilli leurs voisins vénézuéliens avec cette grande générosité-là et ont choisi de s'engager. C'est un processus qui n'a pas été facile, mais grâce à la création du statut de protection temporaire pour les Vénézuéliens, la Colombie, les Colombiens ont accueilli ces Vénézuéliens-là de façon exceptionnelle. C'est un statut innovant qui a permis aux Vénézuéliens de devenir visibles en Colombie. C'est-à-dire que ça leur donne accès à des services, ça donne accès aux enfants à l'école en Colombie, aux services de santé. Ça change la donne pour ces gens-là. Et je pense aussi que ça contribue à aider la société colombienne à voir cette crise migratoire-là, non pas seulement comme une crise, mais comme une série d'opportunités. Des opportunités pour enrichir la Colombie, que ce soit au niveau de sa société, que ce soit au niveau de son développement économique. Alors, c'est un choix qu'ils ont fait et c'est important de reconnaître cette générosité-là. Mon deuxième point porte sur l'écoute. Alors, c'est important de faciliter l'écoute de la population qui est touchée. Et encore une fois, quand je parle de population touchée ici, bien sûr, je pense aux Vénézuéliens, aux réfugiés, aux migrants qui sont venus, mais également aux résidents des communautés qui les accueillent. Si on veut éviter de se retrouver avec une crise de xénophobie, si on veut faciliter l'inclusion de ces gens-là, il faut écouter tout le monde. Il faut écouter les voix des marginaux, il faut écouter ce que les enfants ont à dire, écouter le pays hôte aussi parce que c'est chez eux que ça se passe. Donc, de notre côté, le Canada, ce que nous avons fait, nous avons facilité, créé des espaces de dialogue, de consultation, aider ces processus-là de discussion entre la population qui était migrante, les autorités locales, publiques, la société civile aussi et le monde universitaire. Le troisième point de l'expérience que je voulais partager avec vous, c'est l'importance, ça semble simple, mais c'est vraiment crucial de travailler de façon articulée et collaborative. Donc, ensemble, bien sûr, on a l'impression qu'on va plus vite, mais surtout, en fait, on va beaucoup plus loin dans la recherche de solutions. Et je pense qu'un excellent exemple du travail coordonné sur le terrain qu'on a eu, c'est le programme « L'éducation ne peut attendre » ici en Colombie, où l'ambassade, en fait, du Canada co-préside un comité directeur avec le ministère de l'Éducation et ça nous permet vraiment de travailler de façon constructive. On a une collaboration incroyable sur le terrain grâce à ce comité directeur-là. Mon quatrième point touche l'innovation. C'est fondamental de ne pas avoir peur de rechercher constamment des nouveaux mécanismes, des programmes, de ne pas juste répéter des recettes parce que one size does not fit all. Il faut répondre toujours de façon créative. Les problèmes changent. Les stress sur la population sont différents, il faut constamment essayer de se réadapter. Mais pour conclure ma présentation, je voulais vraiment partager avec vous une expérience professionnelle et personnelle vraiment récente. Il y a 2 jours encore, j'étais à Cúcuta, qui est une ville frontalière avec le Venezuela. Et juste dans la région Cúcuta et ses environs, il y a 52 000 enfants vénézuéliens qui vivent en Colombie, qui ont été déplacés, qui se sont déplacés. La majorité d'entre eux, bien sûr, ont un grand retard sur leur parcours d'apprentissage, puis ils sont généralement aussi très vulnérables. Alors, j'ai eu l'opportunité de parler avec des enfants, des adolescents, les éducateurs, Les parents et les autorités locales, les représentants du ministère de l'Éducation, représentants des frontières, tout le monde a partagé son histoire, à la fois professionnelle, mais les enfants, c'était surtout très personnel. Alors, ils m'ont raconté leur drame, mais aussi leurs rêves. Et c'est grâce au programme en fait qu'on finance, et on est fiers des programmes qu'on finance dans cette région-là. C'est grâce à ces programmes-là que les enfants recommencent à s'exprimer et recommencent à rêver. Et là, ici, les mots d'Amélie, plutôt, m'ont beaucoup touchée. Et ça me faisait penser justement à Francesca, une jeune adolescente vénézuélienne de 14 ans, que notre programme qui s'appelle Protéger les enfants en mouvement a littéralement sorti de la rue. Ça l'a aidé énormément. Aujourd'hui, Francesca va à l'école en Colombie et puis elle compose, elle chante du rap sur des thèmes comme la tolérance et l'inclusion. Et ça, j'ai trouvé ça vraiment inspirant. C'est une jeune fille pleine de lumière. Et je pense aussi à Cassie, qui a 13 ans. Cassie vit toujours au Venezuela, mais tous les matins, avec ses deux petits frères, elle traverse la frontière et puis très souvent, elle passe par la rivière parce que c'est plus rapide pour amener ses petits frères au cours de mise à niveau scolaire dans l'un des programmes qu'on a aidé à mettre sur pied et à financer avec l'UNICEF également. Et puis, Cassie a réussi à réintégrer l'école du côté de la Colombie, elle aussi. Mais elle continue tous les samedis, elle retraverse, en plus de toute la semaine, elle retraverse le samedi la frontière pour aller à la Villa Rosario de l'UNICEF, où elle se joint à un groupe de discussion de jeunes filles adolescentes et ça les aide à exprimer leurs émotions, à partager leur bonheur et leur malheur et donc de surmonter toutes ces situations-là. Donc, ce que j'ai vu, c'est évidemment de la résilience, de la force chez ces jeunes-là qui ont tout laissé derrière eux, qui ne sont pas trop sûrs de où la vie va les mener, mais qui recommencent à avoir des rêves, qui recommencent à être des enfants. Et je pense que la bonne nouvelle là-dedans, c'est que les rêves et l'espoir peuvent avoir le dessus sur l'adversité si on les aide. Et ça, c'est notre travail. Donc, en conclusion, oui, il reste beaucoup de travail à faire, c'est sûr, mais il faut continuer de le faire ensemble pour l'apprentissage. Il faut qu'aucun enfant ne reste derrière. Et puis, le travail qu'on fait est important. Si ces enfants-là continuent d'avoir du courage, nous aussi. Alors, merci.
Thank you so very much. And I want to thank all of our speakers for your contributions. It has been an absolute honor to MC this summit. I'm refreshed, I'm inspired, and I look forward to reflecting in the coming days on what this rich content means and how we actually put it into action. I'm particularly interested in how we can continue to work together for learning from the voices of our young people in particular. On a personal note, this November will mark 50 years that my family and I have been in Canada and came here as refugees, and it's not lost on me the importance of education and how instrumental Canada is in terms of the policies around refugees, integration, education, inclusion. So I want to thank you again for what has been an incredible honor to be the MC. I'll now turn this back to Minister Sajjan to offer closing remarks for the summit. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Farah. And once again, I just want to thank you for not only emceeing this event, but being a champion, not only for education, for gender equalities, and so many other things that you have brought forward through your passion because of your lived experience. So thank you for everything that you are doing, and thank you for being an inspiration to so many. And also want to thank all of our speakers, especially those who have shared their lived experience with us and our youth council as well. And the last 2 days have been poignant and very inspirational, as it is a call to action for all of us. So thank you for your time, your dedication, for your contributions. And Canada calls on all of the other countries and global and national leaders to champion the actions outlined in the Youth Manifesto and Summit Outcome documents. And many nations have already shown their tremendous support for this. So when we meet again in July and September for the United Nations Transforming Education Summit, we need to show progress. And when we meet again at the Global Refugee Forum in December 2023, we need to show results. We need to act now to ensure that every child everywhere has the opportunity that the education gives. And we can make this a reality. So thank you for all your solidarity in advocating for the meaningful inclusion of children and youth, and for giving education in conflict settings the important attention it deserves. And together, we can ensure that all children have access to a safe, equitable, and inclusive education. And I want, once again, thank you for so many members who shared their lived experience. I know it has not been easy, but it's been very important for all of us to hear, and we need to share those stories because it does answer the question why for all of us, why we need to take action, and that's what the closing is about. So we will be taking action. Thank you for joining me for the last two days. It's been very inspirational for me. So let me close this conference with a joint video message from some of our partners. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Refugees deserve a quality education for a better future. Are you with us?
Refugees deserve quality education for a better future. Are you with us?
Refugees deserve quality education for a better future. Are you with us?
Refugees deserve a quality education for a better future. Are you with us?
Refugees deserve quality education for a better future. Are you with us?
Refugee and displaced children and youth lose a lot to conflict, and quality education shouldn't be part of that. On March 30th and 31st, as part of its international Together for Learning campaign to promote quality education and lifelong learning opportunities, Canada is hosting the virtual Together for Learning Summit. Displaced youth from around the world will come together and share their knowledge, insights, experiences, and recommendations to help ensure all young people affected by conflict have access to education and are part of the decision-making process that affects them and their future.
We know the challenges you face in getting an education due to conflict, insecurity, climate change, and crisis. We know what we need to do to ensure all children and youth have access to quality education. Education that is inclusive, equally available, no matter where you're from, your gender, or the language you speak. Education that helps you learn, grow, and reach your full potential. We know we need more and better data to improve how decisions are made. And we need to make sure that you, the young people, are part of all those decisions.
Assurons-nous que personne ne soit laissé de côté. En tant qu'ambassadrice du Canada au El Salvador, je me tiens aux côtés des jeunes réfugiés et des jeunes déplacés de force du El Salvador et du monde entier, et je m'engage à agir ensemble pour l'apprentissage.
Por eso nos unimos, trabajando por no dejar ningún niño fuera y por trabajar juntos y en equipo para mejorar esta educación, porque juntos lograremos que el aprendizaje mejore y haremos de la inclusión un pilar básico del acceso educativo en toda la trayectoria.
Y juntos queremos que todos los jóvenes puedan participar también a compartir sus posiciones para que se tomen las buenas decisiones. Ahora es tiempo de actuar. No queremos dejar ningún joven detrás. Muchas gracias.
Educar es aportar a la humanidad. Es ahí donde nosotros, sí, todos nosotros, sabemos lo que nos toca hacer, lo que debemos hacer para garantizar que más niños y que más jóvenes tengan acceso a la educación. A donde se encuentre un niño por educar, sea en la ciudad o en el campo, hasta ahí debemos llegar. La educación es la opción para cambiar la historia de vida de la generación presente y de las generaciones que siguen. No nos detengamos hasta lograr que nuestros niños alcancen su máximo potencial.
Constantemente escuchamos a jóvenes que experimentan inestabilidad y desplazamiento. Conocemos los desafíos que enfrentan para obtener educación debido a los conflictos, la inseguridad, el cambio climático y la crisis. Sabemos lo que tenemos que hacer para garantizar que toda la niñez, adolescencia y juventud tengan acceso a una educación de calidad, educación inclusiva que sea para todos. No importa de dónde se provenga, el género o el idioma. La educación facilita el aprendizaje, el crecimiento y el desarrollo del máximo potencial. Sabemos que necesitamos conocer el contexto y las cifras para tomar decisiones de una manera integral. Tenemos que asegurarnos de que los jóvenes sean partícipes de todas estas decisiones. El momento de actuar es ahora. No podemos arriesgarnos a dejar atrás a ningún niño, adolescente o joven.
The time for action is now. We can't risk leaving any child or youth behind. We need to all work together for learning.